mushrooms. I'm here because of mushrooms, and that's why they're part of the sponsorship or the partnership package with Diabetes SA. So I'll tell you a bit about mushrooms for a moment, but before I do, I want to tell you a little bit about vegetables and try and complement some of the work that Professor Allison has done for you already this morning. And it's okay, I just forgot to turn it on. It will now work. Look at this. When we did a survey, that's when you paid for the government to do a survey, on any day, 1 in 4 people ate no vegetables whatsoever. Now, you are probably sitting there thinking, how can you do that? Like go an entire day without vegetables. But some people find that quite easy. And in fact, I remember doing a survey way back in the 80s, and we had to do surveys of people's 24-hour intake. And one gentleman sat in front of me, and all he ate over 24 hours was a packet of noodles, those noodles we add hot water to. That was it, entire day's consumption of food. So there are people out there that eat, well, what we'd call kind of strangely. So every day, 1 in 4 folk don't eat any vegetables at all. And remember, 7 out of 10 people, 7 out of 100 people, beg your pardon, will eat enough vegetables to be good for you. Now, when you ask people, just name a few foods that are good for you. I mean, everybody goes fruits, vegetables, like easy question. And then you go, well, why aren't you eating enough to be good for you? I mean, like an apple doesn't do its work in the fruit bowl. It has to go inside to be useful to you. So we don't. Now remember, this is self-reported. This is what human beings tell us. And you probably know human beings as well as I do, all right? They fib, all right? So they always overestimate how much fruit and vegetables they're consuming. So it's not 7 out of 100. It's probably 5. And I don't mean 5 out of 100. It's probably just 5 people. There's probably just 5 people out there eating enough vegetables and fruit to be good for you. But we know it's not many. And we hope that with the evidence that you've heard from Professor Allison and myself this morning, that you'll go out and tell the world, you definitely need to be cranking up your vegetable and fruit consumption. So if we look at a serve, what is a serve? Can I ask you? This is a question to see whether you were paying attention a little earlier. What would be a serve of vegetables? Anybody got an idea? Yes. Oh, said with conviction as well, I might add. Like this is the answer. I kind of like that. Pretty close, I would agree with you. Half a cup, 75 grams, or a cup of salad. People ask, why is it a cup and not half a cup? It's only because salad like vegetables and, lettuce and tomato and cucumber. There's quite a bit of air. It's like it's not packed in like it would be with the legumes. So there's a bit more there. Or a medium tomato, or as you probably guessed if you went outside and checked out the mushrooms, it's 3 mushrooms will be a serve of vegetables too. Although, you'll learn a little bit later that we're not quite a vegetable. So, a few reasons why to eat vegetables. Maybe, how about I throw out to you? Give me an example of why you'd want to eat vegetables, apart from the fact that Mum told you should. Yes? That's nice to know. Craving for vegetables. That's right. We need your genes. You're a strange man. Fibre content, vitamins and minerals. Anything else that might be added there? I think there was... sorry, somebody had a comment? Yes?
I get very moody if I don't have vegetables every day.
There you go. It wouldn't be nice if that was a great reason to be eating vegetables for all of us, When you drive along and somebody's abusing you from another car, hey, mate, just eat more vegetables, That's my message to you. Food for the brain. Yeah, you've heard some stuff about how it may be actually influencing cognition. Here's some thoughts. Potassium, because we know it does help with blood pressure, as in keeping your blood pressure healthy. We also know that it actually helps with your bones because having a good ratio between the potassium, which is coming mainly from plant foods, to sodium, which is the part of salt we want to keep down. We know that helps conserve bone mass as well, so less calcium being lost from your body, therefore more retained, therefore better bones. Vitamins such as folate, vitamin C, beta-carotene. You've already mentioned that. The phytonutrients, and you'll hear more about that as well, because that's kind of like a very sexy term now, phytonutrients. That is, there are more things in fruits and vegetables than just the vitamins and minerals that seem to be having a bioactive effect, that is, having an influence on your health. Fibre, you knew that, okay, roughage, as we used to call it. Chewing and satiety. More about this later, but right now, remember, when you sit down and eat your legumes, your nuts, your vegetables, your fruit, you need to chew. Chewing takes time. By taking time, it gives your body to actually feed back. There's a hormonal system inside your body that says you are now have eaten enough food, you can stop. So there's a neat little feedback mechanism which you won't get if you wolf down your dinner. All right, because there's a few out there, I know, a few Labradors at dinner time. Yes, somebody's already acknowledged. It's like it's a race. Oh, dinner, woomph. You know, it's gone. You're looking at other people going, so what's the hold-up, guys? You know, like I'm waiting for dessert. And you're all going, well, let's just slow it down a bit. So yes, it helps you slow down your eating so that you can enjoy your food, get the flavours out, which in turn means it's more satisfying to your body over a long time, and therefore, and you remember the research that Alison showed you earlier, that if you had a salad prior to dinner, okay, it took a little bit of time, then that meant that you ate less food afterwards. So that's part of that satiety effect. It bumps out the low nutrient foods, because if you sit down and just imagine if everybody, like by law, you had to eat a salad before anything else, anytime you felt hungry, then of course you're going to bump out the cakes, the biscuits, the croissants, etc. So you'll eat less of those foods which have a low nutrient content. And then, critically, I know people are saying, do we add GST to fresh produce? Okay, you can argue that next time you vote, but essentially it is still affordable. It does concern me that people go and see apples. Oh, apples are $5 a kilo this week. Yeah, that's actually quite cheap. That probably still works out to be about 80 cents an apple. All right, but you know, if we see Tim Tams at $1.95, that's it. Bang. We'll have 3 packets of those, won't we? Because it seems cheap. Yet if we look at the benefits to our health, it's far better for us to be consuming sticking in the fresh produce aisle than going down the biscuit aisle. And I mentioned Tim Tams because that's, per capita, that's your favourite biscuit. Did you know that? I mean, we eat 1.8 million Tim Tams in this country. 1.8 million. Each day, by the way. That's a day. All right. Now, I don't eat Tim Tams, so somebody out there is having my share as well. We mentioned potassium. Here's just one link between potassium, which we get primarily from your whole grain cereals, your fruits and your veggies, and your risk of stroke. Now, you can see that as we consume more potassium, our relative risk of stroke diminishes quite significantly. Now, to put this all in context, because you're going, well, I don't know how many milligrams of potassium I consume. Don't blame me. I don't know how many milligrams of potassium I consume either. But here, that's the average consumption in this country is around about there. All right? Then, if we could get everybody to eat 5 vegetables, then we're reaching here already. So already relatively a 25% reduction. If we can get everybody to eat 5 vegetables and 2 fruit, then we're getting here. If we can get everybody to eat 5 vegetables and 2 fruit and have whole grain cereals, then we get down to there, about a third reduction. Wonderful. All right? I mean, that's of public health significance if we can do that. So that's part of the reason. This is not just that we come from a nutrient perspective. There's an outcome to this. Okay, you will be better off for consuming. Now, Professor Allison mentioned salt. Well, she said salt, but didn't mention a lot about it because she had so many other things to tell you about nuts and legumes. So here I've just taken tomatoes. And on the left, okay, tomato, then there's some crushed tomatoes, then some whole peel tomatoes, then there's tomato paste. What I want you to do just for a short time okay, with a neighbour. Okay, you might just know people around you. If you don't, just introduce yourself. Say, hi, I'm Glenn. Hi, I'm Alison. And then say, what order, going from left to right, do you think would be in increasing amounts of salt per 100 grams? So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Chat with somebody near you. What order do you think they should be, going from the lowest on the left to the highest on the right? You have 30 seconds. Okay, team. All right, I'm afraid you do not win a prize if you put tomato as the lowest. All right, there's no prizes there. You are dead right. All right. But it's not so easy. You can't, to me, all right, after 35 years, you might be able to, I can't, intuitively go, yep, I know the answer. I would have to look at the nutrition information panel myself. All right? So, yes, 8 milligrams, so everything, all fresh produce will provide you with some sodium. It's just naturally there. And at the other end, you can see this is much higher. But also remember, this is concentrated, it's a paste. So whereas you'd eat 1 tomato, maybe 2 tomatoes, you wouldn't eat a whole jar of that, I would imagine. But you would probably have the equivalent of maybe 1 or 2 tablespoons. So even if you do 1 or 2 tablespoons, that would still be well over 100 milligrams of, that would still be over 200 milligrams of sodium. The other two, you kind of need to, see if we can do this. Okay, you need to swap that one for that one. So if you got that one, great. All right, because you can see there that you've gone, and in this case, I've gone to Coles. I've bought, all right, if you can't see it, just take my word for it. The background image is exactly the same. All right, just the wording's different. So that background image is exactly the same. And you could easily grab one for the other. All right, unless you got your glasses out. All right, do what I do. Okay, get your glasses out. See if you can work out what's on there. So you can see this one, they've added none at all. You can see the Heart Foundation symbol there in the bottom right-hand corner. They've added no sodium to that whatsoever, but they've added quite a bit there. All right. So when you're looking at increasing vegetable content, Professor Alison mentioned if you buy legumes in a can, that's absolutely fine. And let me tell you, you've probably done it, I've done it many times. You can make hummus in, 2 minutes. If you can use canned chickpeas and maybe canned kidney beans, it's dead easy to do. But you still need to, for your health's sake, check the sodium content, okay, on that label, because some will be lower. Now, if you remember what Alison said, if you rinse them, you'll drop down whatever sodium's there by about 40% anyway, all right? So don't use the liquid that comes with it. Do a bit of a rinse, and then you'll buy. Or the smart thing is buy the noted salt. I'll endorse what she said, and that is, sure, it'll taste a little bit different for a while, but your buds will get used to a change in taste. But you need to give it time. The payoff will be 2 or 3 months afterwards. Okay, makes sense? So check that data, because it's not easy to find, just as I said, intuitively. Here's a wonderful bit of research. It's not the only bit of research in this area, but what we do is we set up in this case, it was a cafe in England, okay, just outside of London. This is the guy who owns the cafe. And what they did, and you do this with cameras and you check everything out, so everything's being watched, people are being watched, but you don't tell them that they're being watched, you don't tell them what you're doing. But you can see here, what they did was change the salt shaker. Okay, depending on how good your eyes are, the one on the left has got 17 holes in the salt shaker. The other one's got 5, and you can see just by changing the number of holes in the top of the salt shaker, you reduce the amount of salt they added to their fish and chips, etc., by 60%. Now think about that. Right? That's all they've done, change the number of holes. What that tells you is that when people sit down with their fish and chips, they go, this needs salt. Don't ask the question, we will not try it first. It needs salt. Grab salt shaker, and what do? We go chicka 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 chicka. We do 3 transverse. all right? And then we know we've got enough salt. And then we eat it and we're happy. Nobody's measuring the number of little salt particles that come out. So if you don't tell people, and there's just as long as they do the 3 transverse over the food, they reckon they've got enough salt. So they're actually not tasting it on the salt content or the saltiness, they're tasting it basically on the right arm doing 3 transitions over the... Okay? So we know we can change what you do at the table. There are 3 kingdoms from which we consume. All right? There's actually 5 biological kingdoms out there. The 2 we generally don't eat a lot of, but you will inadvertently anyway. Things like bacteria, multicellular items we tend not to eat too much of. The ones that we do eat a lot of food from are the plant foods. Okay? And Alison has already gone into depth about a couple of those. We also consume from the animal kingdom. And I might add that includes insects, and insects will be far more available over the next few years. And if you've travelled into Asia, I'm sure you have enjoyed possibly grasshoppers and ants and things like that. So we think that that may be part of the future of food consumption. Interestingly, that on this planet right now, you've got, 7 billion? And of those 7 billion, they think around about 1.5, 2 billion eat insects every day. That's part of their diet. And we're going, ooh, grasshoppers? You've got to be kidding. There's people out there who just think nothing of it. They taste wonderful. And they do, fried with a bit of garlic. And then there's mushrooms. Mushrooms are a completely different kingdom. And the reason I tell you that is that it'll make more sense about what I'm about to tell you now about the mushroom, because you have to keep thinking, I can't compare this to carrots or Brussels sprouts or to nuts or to legumes. It is different, completely different kingdom. Right? It is the 3rd food kingdom. We consume primarily the button mushrooms, which you've enjoyed out there at morning tea time, but it goes to shiitake, maitake. You know all the ones that you see in sometimes dried in Asian stores, or you might see them in a good greengrocer, the whole range of them out there. The reason that I want to just for a moment talk to you about mushrooms is just to give you an idea of where the research is going, and there's lots and lots of research going in mushrooms. If I can just, in one slide, give you a kind of an overall picture of what's going on, I think you'll agree that mushrooms have got quite a bit of potential. Let me just start off. All right, you've got your B group vitamins. There's 4 B group vitamins in there that you'll get in over 20%, like pantothenic acid, niacin, riboflavin, etc. You get 20% or more in a serve. Now we can't kind of do that with vegetables. Now, I'm not making a direct comparison between the 2 to suggest one is better than the other. I'm just saying this is why they're different. You can see vitamin D there. I'll tell you a bit more about vitamin D in mushrooms in a moment, but vitamin D you will not find in plant foods. You've got the minerals such as selenium, copper and chromium are in there too. They're all essential minerals for you, but they're particularly high in the mushroom. The fibre in mushrooms is actually different to the fibre that you'll find in plant food. And we think it appears the evidence is that fibre is actually having a bioactive effect. In other words, that is looking to be a kind of fibre that does things like lower blood glucose levels, lower blood cholesterol levels, and maybe even acting on a different level altogether. And that is at a cancer level, at a cancer cell level, having an effect on boosting immunity so that your immune function works better at killing cancer cells. And I'll show you, after this slide, a couple of slides on just one, which is breast cancer, but the evidence is quite powerful for both breast cancer reduction and prostate cancer for the guys, all right? More powerful for the women, the evidence, that is, than for the guys, but they're both quite, how shall we say, promising. Okay, so these fibres are working to lower your blood glucose. Mushrooms have got a low GI anyway, because I tell you that because people ask me questions along those lines. What's the glycemic index of mushrooms? Well, it's very, very low, like close to 0. No more detail than that, but just to tell you, it'll have virtually no influence at all on blood glucose levels. Blood cholesterol, we've mentioned. The immune system enhancement, there are literally hundreds of papers now pointing out that they have an effect on the whole range of your immune system, from natural killer cells to macrophages, etc., which are working to help you protect yourself from disease. Now, Professor Allison mentioned a little bit about brain protection, and there is evidence too, right now, that compounds in mushrooms work to stop plaque formation in the brain. All right, you may have heard the term beta amyloid plaques. They start to build up inside your brain to cause dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Now, there are compounds in mushrooms that seem to stop that happening. Now, what you do in science is you generally do this on animals, in laboratory animals first. So you do it on rats and mice to see how it's affecting their brain. And then you progress, should you get a good result, to human trials. All I can tell you is that the one that was done in Australia by the CSIRO was so impressed the scientists so much they went straight to human trials. So right now, and probably going to be published around about the same time as your publication with regards to legumes. So it was legumes or nuts? Both on effect on brain. Maybe they'll come out the same time or similar time, pointing out that they equally have a great effect on protecting the brain from dementia. Now, you can imagine the public health benefit of that. Okay, if it comes out that nuts, legumes, and mushrooms are all working there, then they're going to work probably better, like synergistically, with the whole consumption. But I'm just telling you that the early results on the mushrooms were so impressive that they went straight to human trials, and that's what they're doing right now to see influence of regular consumption of mushrooms on how your brain functions. Professor Allison mentioned this too, microbiota, which is all the bacteria inside your gut, okay? And when you consume anything with fibre, whether it's being a wholemeal slice of bread, whether it's a nut, whether it's kidney beans, whether it's a carrot, or whether it's mushrooms, they all always go into your large bowel, eventually reach your large bowel. People think that fibre acts like a bottle brush, like, okay? Oh, I can feel it already. They don't work like that at all. You eat fibre to feed those bacteria. The bacteria love it. They go, thank you very much, this is wonderful, we just love fibre. And they eat the fibre, and in doing so, they then produce compounds which protect you from things like bowel cancer. They also make your stool nice and big and soft so it's easier to pass. Okay, so that's part of the reason why we need to feed those bacteria. As she told you that you are much more bacteria than you are human. In fact, you have inside and on your body, you are 9 times more cellular bacteria than you are human cells. And the only reason you can look in the mirror and look like a human is because your human cells are bigger than your bacterial cells. Okay? But I do tell you, if anybody tells you that you're full of crap, it is actually a compliment. You can say, thank you very much. It's because I eat lots of plant food and mushrooms. For those of you who do suffer gout, you can go onto the internet and go, okay, can I eat mushrooms if I have gout? And you'll find there are websites that say, don't eat mushrooms if you've got gout, all right? And all I can tell you, I've spent hours, days, weeks on this, and everything suggests otherwise. All the published data says you can eat mushrooms. Mushrooms probably protect you from gout and help you if you've got gout. So if you've got gout and you're avoiding mushrooms for the gout, okay, sorry, end of story. There's no evidence for that whatsoever. Somebody made that up. We're trying to think when. We're finding maybe 1960s, 1970s, but there's no evidence for it. So consume your mushrooms if you have gout. They'll probably work in your favour. Umami is a Japanese term. It means kind of delicious, but it's that savoury flavour, all right? Because you know that you can taste things like salt and sweet and bitter and sour, but you also taste savoury. There are taste buds or taste receptors in your mouth, inside your mouth, that will pick up the savoury flavour. Think of Parmesan cheese. Think of that tomato paste I showed you. Think mushrooms. They'll always give you that savoury flavour. But in doing so, if you add things like mushrooms to your dish, it means you can get away with less salt. Now, when we do research, we go, okay, we've got to try and work out how much salt we can reduce by, and the evidence suggests at least 25%. So whatever you see, you can reduce by 25%. You can probably reduce it by 50%. If you're like me, I'm one of those boring dietitian types who don't add salt to their cooking anyway, so it just makes the meal taste a lot better. And if you make chicken burgers, let me tell you, if you make 1/3 mushroom and 2/3 chicken, it actually the whole flavour is really much more enhanced. And that, we think, is part of the reason why it helps us to control our weight. Okay, more later. But first, check this out. All right, ladies especially, or men, if you love your ladies, look at mushrooms and breast cancer risk. Okay, this is compared to people who have no mushrooms in their diet at all. We give them a relative risk of 1. Okay, Professor Allison showed you slides which was similar. Okay, you go left-hand side 1, and then as you see how much you reduce if, for example, you had salad before you ate something. Okay, and this is 1 mushroom per week, 3 mushrooms per week, or 1 mushroom per day. 1 mushroom per day, 1 mushroom per day average. Okay, not 1 kilo, 1 mushroom. And you can see this is 3 published papers pointing out the dip. They only went to 3 per week. That was 1 per day. This one is an Australian research, this one. Okay, and you can see that the line is a dramatic drop. Now, there have been 7 other papers along mushroom consumption and your risk of breast cancer. This is the summary, all right? It's called a meta-analysis. Alison mentioned a meta-analysis in some of her work. Okay, it's where you take all the research you've got on the same topic and see if you can actually distill it down to see if it's heading in exactly the same direction. And it was for, if you remember, it was for legumes and lowering your blood cholesterol, things like that. So this is doing the same with mushrooms. Okay. So this was published last year. Mushrooms and low risk. And what this is saying is, at worst, mushroom consumption of 20 grams per day. That's less than 1 mushroom per day. So in other words, if you ate mushrooms, a reasonable serve 3 times per week, all right? At worst, you've reduced your risk of breast cancer by 25% on what we know today. Now, if you walked into your Minister of Health and said, I know how to reduce the risk of breast cancer by 25%, they would say, well, sit down, I'll get you a cup of tea because this sounds interesting. All right? So it's a message that we need to get out from a public health perspective. You can see there the bottom line is at best 50%, but probably on all the evidence we have in February 2015, you reduce your risk of breast cancer by 1/3. All right? So tell your kids, tell your grandkids, all right? Especially if you've got a family history. That's one way you can put the odds in your favour. You happy with that? Does that kind of make sense? Right, cool. We think that we have good reason to see why that's happening because that's what we call an association. All right? And association doesn't necessarily mean that one causes the other. But we do know now that we start off with a carcinogen of some sort, all right, such as smoking. That causes a reactive oxygen species, which causes a mutation in the DNA of a cell, which transforms that cell into a cancer cell, which means then they proliferate as cancer cells. And then one day you go to the doctor with a lump or a pain, and he or she says, you have cancer. That's the progress, or the progression. There are compounds in mushrooms that influence at every stage, all the way through. All right? So we can see that there's evidence of a cause and effect, but we have to be absolutely professionally honest with you and say that we can't say that's the definite reason. But I think the numbers suggest that if you enjoy your mushrooms, then continue to do so. Maybe crank them up a little bit. If you put mushrooms in sunlight, they actually generate vitamin D. This is why they are different to vegetables. How much vitamin D they actually produce, and we did some work at Sydney University. We got them to look at mushrooms, and they were putting mushrooms out in the sun. It was in July and August, okay, so not in the middle of summer. And we know that we've also done this in some of our retail mushrooms. It's not published yet, and not letting anything out of the bag, but to tell you that even in the retail mushrooms, we're finding a significant amount of vitamin D. But if you do it through sunlight, it'll depend on the season, the latitude, the time of day, and whether there's any cloud cover. But you can, right now, put your mushrooms out in the sun that you want and bought down the shops, out in the sun, and they're out there generating vitamin D. All right? They're a bit like your skin. You know when you put your skin out? The UV light on your skin, okay, gets your body to then start producing vitamin D. All right? I try and explain it that way because I used to talk about production of vitamin D by going out in the sun, and people thought that the sun shot out vitamin D. All right? You just stood there and the sun goes bang, bang, bang. There you go. There's your vitamin D. But it doesn't. It's actually the UV light that's causing a transformation just underneath the surface of your skin. And the same happens with the mushroom. So if we put the buttons out for an hour and put the cups out for 2 hours, we're getting basically your daily requirements of vitamin D per serve, and that was in the spring and the summer. Spring and the autumn, beg your pardon. Okay, so it's not a long time. Maybe put some tape in your car when you buy the mushrooms. Just tape the mushrooms to the bonnet of your car. Drive home. And then you got vitamin D mushrooms when you get home. I mean, it could be as easy as that. The regular mushrooms that you do buy contain vitamin D. Those are actually labelled vitamin D mushrooms, and I do forewarn you, they're not widely available in Adelaide. I come from Perth, they're not widely available in Perth either. So the mushroom farmers are producing them, but it's going to take a little bit of time before they get widely available. But if they do have on the label vitamin D mushrooms, then you know that you're getting at least your daily supply from one serve. So we know from published research in Australia, about 1 in 3 people have got a vitamin D deficient in this country. Okay, it's going to be less now, but more in September after winter. We know that the sunlight generates vitamin D. Right now, your Australian farmers have got they have a little UV light at the end of the packaging process, and it just gives out a little pulse of it's called pulsed UV light. And that just stimulates them to produce vitamin D. So even after they're harvested, you can do it while they're growing, but you can do it after they're harvested too. Okay. Now, in this country, we have recommendations for vitamin D. If you're young, about 5 micrograms per day. If you're middle-aged, maybe 10. As you advance in experience, maybe 15. And the reason that it increases with age is because as you get older, the ability for you to convert the UV lights or use the UV lights on your skin to generate vitamin D diminishes. Okay, it's just an age-related thing. So we bump it up as we get older. Now, I can tell you with a high degree of confidence that when the NMRA, I was about to say a car company, but no, if you National Medical and Research Council, okay, will bump those up probably to 10 to 15 to 20, okay? That's, talking to the vitamin D researchers in this country, that's where they think it's going to head. So it's likely to be higher than that. Right now, in this country, the law says 10 micrograms is your daily supply, okay? That's why I use 10 as the example of the vitamin D mushrooms giving you your day's requirements. You will get some in eggs, naturally, in beef, naturally. Margarine has vitamin D added to it anyway. You can get vitamin D fortified milk. It's not high in milk that we buy, but if it's vitamin D fortified milk, you'll get more. Sardines and other oily fish will give you a bit more per serve, per 100 grams. I've tried to put this into the amounts you are likely to consume at a sitting, but we can get you up to 20 micrograms quite easily with adding some UV light to the mushroom. So it means that the mushroom is in many regards, probably the simplest way to get your vitamin D requirements for the day. The vitamin D in the mushroom is what we call bioavailable, because it's always a question that comes up. Okay, so it's there, but can we actually absorb it? Can it get into the body? All right, and yes, it can. And we know that it's shelf stable. In other words, you don't have to race home. You don't have to put them out into the sun and then cook them straight away. It will be shelf stable. But by shelf stable, I'm assuming you'll probably eat them within, 3 days, 4 days of purchasing. We know it's stable to cooking, and we know it does actually influence your bone health. So we do know that it's working in your favour. This is what they look like on the shelf. So one serve is 100% of needs. But all I can tell you is that these also too, especially if they're sliced, what's happening, and I actually didn't realise this is kind of stuff that we work out ourselves, because we thought, okay, let's use regular mushrooms as a control. Okay, what is it that's there? And I foolishly assumed they'd be close to zero. And then we find we're getting 2, 3, 4. Some people actually find up to 5 micrograms. In other words, like a half of your requirements in a serve of mushrooms that actually don't have vitamin D on the label at all. What we think is happening is when they get harvested, they're all harvested by hand. Okay, your farmers are out there actually cutting at the base and harvest them. You need light then to see where you're going. And then, of course, they're under the fluoro lights at the shop. And both of those will actually, UV light is part of the light spectrum. So we think that's probably where they're already generating vitamin D. And so if you've got them out in the kitchen for a while, or as I said, out in the sun for a while, it'll go even further. So this is about the bit about mushrooms and weight. You've already seen some good information about how plant foods such as your nuts and your legumes help you to control your weight or control your appetite. This is a wonderful bit of research. It was done over 12 months, all right? And let me just see if we get this right. So if you can imagine this, we've got 2 groups of people, all right? And this group, all right, we've said, okay, here's some tips to lose weight. Here's some ideas. This is what you should be doing in your situation. We think you maybe need to, cut back on those Tim Tams and eat more nuts. So we told them that. This group, we said exactly the same. Here's some tips to lose weight. But there's a deal. You have to eat mushrooms every day. You have to have a serve of mushrooms every day for the next 12 months. All right? That's the only difference. So we told them exactly the same things. So for the first 6 months, they all got counselling. For the second 6 months, they got no counselling at all. So counselling about weight control, activity, food choices, etc., what we'd normally do. But one group has to consume mushrooms every day, and the other group were told nothing. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Here's the difference, okay? So this is your standard group. So they got some counselling, lost a bit of weight around the middle. This is your centimetres around the middle, around about where your abdomen is, and plonk back up again. Okay, with the mushroom consumers, okay, remember we counselled them, then we'd give them no counselling at all. They lost around 6 centimetres around their waist. That's about 3 belt holes, okay? Be nice to go, okay, if I just ate mushrooms every day, I could be 3 belt holes tighter by Christmas, maybe January. With the standard consumers, they lost a little bit of weight, but only a kilogram is not a lot. With the mushrooms, they lost about 3 kilograms. All right, and we do know from that particular research, they consumed fewer kilojoules every day. So when they ate mushrooms every day, they consumed fewer kilojoules every day to the control or the standard group. Here's a thought for you, because this may be why. Part of the answer, I'm absolutely certain it's not the entire answer, part of the answer might be this thing called umami, which I mentioned to you before is a savoury flavour. And we have flavour and nutrient receptors, okay, in your mouth. You know that because, all right, for those of you who were watching television back in the 80s, remember the taste buds are at the top of your tongue. That's why you turned your bread upside down so you could taste that margarine. All right, but they're not just on the top of your tongue, they're inside your mouth. But now we're realising they're in your stomach, they're in your small intestine, You're in the large intestine. So in a way, you are tasting food all the way through your digestive system. Now, the reason that you get this umami flavour is because these foods have a high level of glutamate. Glutamate is just a natural amino acid in your Parmesan cheese and your tomato paste and your Vegemite. Okay. And we think that because there's receptors there, if you have a high glutamate intake, there's a feedback mechanism that's saying you have consumed, you've consumed something that's very enjoyable, but also very nutrient dense, and therefore you can stop eating now. So we think that's part of it. It won't be the whole answer, but it will be part of the answer, which is kind of weird because you probably didn't know. I mean, I'll be honest with you, until about 3 years ago, I didn't know we had taste receptors in our stomach and our small intestine and our large intestine. I mean, that's seriously weird, isn't it? All right, but they're there because that's what they're doing is they're actually, as I said, nutrient receptors saying, oh, look, we've got this nutrient and this nutrient's coming in, and oh, look, and we've got this and this. Oh, that was actually a very nutritious meal. Stop there. We've got enough nutrients. Thank you very much. If you've done Krispy Kreme, Tim Tam, we're going, and the nutrients are where? Okay, keep eating, because we'll get some nutrients eventually. And that's why it's so much easier, or part of the reason why it's easier to consume the low nutrient foods than the higher nutrient foods. So, to me, weird but interesting. So as you have a meal, you are satisfied or satiated by the meal, but the thing that Professor Allison has spoken about with nuts and legumes, and I have, is it's the long-term effect. It's the satiety. It's what helps you down the tracks that you don't want to come back or don't feel compelled to eat straight afterwards. And then that thing called the microbiome, which I've already mentioned. I probably won't. No, I don't tell you anything more about that. You know that all those good foods go in there and feed that bacteria. If we look back to fruit and vegetables, again, this is just published last year, and you can see part of the reason why. We tell you 2 fruits and 5 veg, don't we? Okay, or 2 fruits and 4 veg and 1 mushroom. So I just sort of throw in a bit of politics there, see if everybody's awake. That's good. Write that down. 2 plus 4 plus 1. And you can see that if we get that 2 and 5, that's probably giving us our greatest protection against. This is all-cause mortality. This is everything that's likely to kill you down the track, okay? So you can see great benefits there of around about 25-30%. Quick couple of things that I get asked about. Nutrient retention of vegetables, okay? If somebody said, is it better to be eating frozen vegetables or fresh vegetables? You probably think, well, fresh is pretty good, all right? Let me just show you that, or give you an indication of which area you might want to head into or think about. When you have frozen vegetables, you blanch them, and the reason that you blanch them is just to kill any outside bugs. Okay, so it's like a partial cooking process. So you get rid of any residual bugs on the outside, makes them clean and wholesome, and then we can package them and freeze them. So the only influence on nutrient retention of these is in a frozen vegetable is the blanching time and then the cooking time. How long it takes you to cook? Because the longer you cook, the more nutrients you lose. You knew that intuitively anyway. With fresh vegetables, you can see that it will depend on the transportation, so how long it's taken to transport, the conditions under which they've been transported, handling, you know that bit where maybe the lettuces are out in the sun, suddenly it's smoko time, so they take 15 minutes to smoke and then come back and keep handling it again. So you don't know what's going on in the background there with the handling process, how long it's been stored. Openness to light. Okay, you've already heard that the nuts don't like light or heat, so the temperature as well. And then the bit that you have influence over is the cooking time. So the only thing that really is in common is the cooking time as to how you can influence that. And if we show you this is research on stored vegetables. On the left-hand side, you see the percentage vitamin C. Now, we use vitamin C because vitamin C is a very fragile vitamin, so whatever happens to vitamin C is likely to be the worst it will happen to any other nutrient. Okay, so there's a few nutrients that are very fragile, like vitamin C. There's other nutrients that aren't. Minerals aren't at all. Won't make any difference to the calcium, zinc, iron content. And here you lose about 20% in the blanching process, and then it won't change. If you put them in the refrigerator, you can see that after 3 days, then the loss of the nutrient is higher than you would have found in the frozen already. The loss of the nutrient is higher, but yeah, the level is lower. Thank you. And of course, and I don't know why you do this. If you just got home and put it all on the fridge on the bench top and left them there, then yes, you get a. And I don't know why you want to keep food for 21 days like that, but vegetables. But that's this particular bit of research. So you can say possibly after 3 days, then you might have been better off having your frozen. So feel comfortable. Feel comfortable having your frozen veggies. And then the other question that we get is, should we juice? Can we juice? Is juicing good for us or not good for us? Yes, you can juice your vegetables if you want to. You can juice your fruits if you want to. No problems at all. All you're doing is taking away the chewing. So it is nutritious, but you've taken away that sensation of chewing. Now, people, you see the adverts saying, oh, the juicing is so natural. And you go, like, when? When was that natural? Like, will you live in the cave? And so, well, before you leave the cave, make sure you have your, juiced kale. And whoever thought kale was edible? Like, I don't. But suddenly it's all very healthy. But you've lost that chewing process. In other words, you lost time that your body needs to know that you are enjoying your food. So be aware that it's quicker and easier to consume something that's juiced than it is if it's in the whole state. And the whole state is the natural state, not the juice state. And then finally, don't listen to people who say, oh, but it's got live enzymes. Like, what does that mean? Like there's enzymes in there going, oh, how's things today? Chatting away. Like, I don't know what live enzymes mean. Now, an enzyme is a protein. When a protein that you eat, whether it's live or not live, whether it's an enzyme or anything, goes in there, goes into your stomach, gets hit by acid, goes into your small intestine, gets digested. All right? That's what happens. So whether it's live or not live, it's not live for too long. All right? It's just going to get eaten up. And then the components of that enzyme or protein then get shuffled off to where it's needed most. So don't fall for that one. And don't fall for the detox. If anybody says, oh, I have it to detox, detox should set off a red light in your brain, because the only time we use detox is to try and hoodwink you, sell you stuff you probably didn't need in the first place. And I'm serious. 35 years of doing this, I have never seen anybody not use detox to rip you off. The word detox to rip you off. Okay, I don't care whether you come from a legal background, I'll happily repeat that. If you see detox, rip off. Okay, that's what's happening. All right, you have this thing, you've got lungs, okay, you've got kidneys, maybe 2 of them, and you've got a liver. They do all the detoxing for you. All right, juice will not help in any way whatsoever. Anybody got some thoughts or questions before? Because we're going to wrap up in about 4 minutes, because you're going to have a demonstration very soon. Yes.
Okay. You were talking about mushrooms. To my knowledge, they always said mushroom grows in the dark. Right?
If you grow them in a growing room, yes.
And the mushroom you're talking about, do they grow in light outside? What kind of mushroom are you talking about?
The mushrooms that you've had at morning tea, the mushrooms you buy retail, they'll generally be grown in a growing room. Mushrooms will grow whether it's light or dark. So to save electricity, you just turn off the lights, because they're going to grow anyway. If you go and pick mushrooms, not suggesting you do, because I'm not an expert on that. If you go and pick mushrooms, then they've gone through the same cycle as every day. So a picked mushroom will always have, for example, a high level of vitamin D. We know that. But the mushrooms we're talking about will come from a growing room.
Yes.
Yep.
Usually the one you buy at the shop, it's growing in the growing room.
Yes.
And the other ones you can pick from the outside in the...
That's right. Up in the Adelaide Hills somewhere. That's right.
What's the importance of 2 fruit? Could you have 7 vegetables and no fruit?
It's a good thought. When we say 2 fruit and 5 veg, partly because fruit is more acceptable to the Australian palate than vegetables. So more people will eat fruit than they do vegetables. Could you have 7 vegetables? I don't see a problem with that at all. That'd be quite fine. I mean, the nutrients you'll find in fruit will be similar to the nutrients you'll find in vegetables. You can do that. And I wouldn't get locked in and people say, 2 fruit and 5 veg. I mean, I can tell you there's some days I have 5 veg and 3 fruit, or more fruit because I'm out on my bike, so I've eaten 3 bananas or something. It's not as if you go, that's it, or there's something magic about it. It's kind of like an indication. So if you're sitting there going, well, I've had 1 fruit and one vegetable, then the message is, no, I should be eating more than that. That's way too low. All right. But if you are active and like it and consuming, for example, 7 serves of veggies and 2 fruit, then that's no problems at all.
Does it matter whether you peel or take the skin off of a mushroom, or should you always leave it on?
In the old days, when I say in the old days, because you get to a certain age where you talk about the old days when you remember your mum peeling the mushrooms because they were actually picked in a field, we call field mushrooms. So we're going, well, we don't know what's happened to this mushroom, so we'll peel it anyway. But now they're in controlled growing rooms, there's no need to peel a mushroom, okay? No, well, if you peel it, then yes, potentially yes. But if you do see some of that compost, all we do say is brush it off. Just brush off the compost. I mean, there's no harm in eating it, but if you don't want it there, just brush it off. So no need to peel a mushroom.
What is the best way to store them? How long do they keep before they lose their nutritional value?
Well, you kind of know that intuitively because you'll see them start to dry and to shrivel and maybe to brown. I think a good storage time, we'll get them in the brown paper bags so they've got the ability to breathe, not in plastic, unless you buy them in the punnets. That plastic is a breathable plastic that's on there. You can, I'll put them in the fridge and try and consume within 2 or 3 days, and that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
What about cooking them? We have to cook them always?
No, well, there's people who won't eat a raw mushroom. I don't know about you, but if you're making mushrooms, it's like there's 2 goes in the mouth as you're cutting them up for the stir fry or whatever. So it won't make any difference if you enjoy them cooked or if you enjoy them raw. Either way, yeah. You got to wait till Danielle gives you the magic. Yes, go.
Do they lose any nutritional value by cooking them?
Do you lose any nutritional value? Well, you do that with anything. Any food that you cook, the fragile vitamins such as folate, vitamin C will diminish. Riboflavin is another one which will diminish. Yes, you'll get that with all of them, some diminution of that. You won't lose other components such as protein won't drop, fibre won't drop, minerals won't drop, but some of the vitamins will do that. So cook them for a minimum amount of time and have a side salad as well. Yeah, I think Fiona's got it now, which means stop. Okay, so I'm going to stop, but before I do, can I just wrap up in stopping? So I got 60 seconds. Okay, 60 seconds, because this comes up too. All right, people ask me, mushrooms, are they gluten free? Because they worry about the compost, because the compost's got hay in it. There's no gluten in hay. The only place the gluten comes from is from the wheat seed. So I can tell you now, all of your mushrooms are gluten free. I can also tell you that all the mushrooms are also lactose free, preservative free, and dolphin safe. Okay. So, but thank you very much for your invitation and time.